Good evening, everybody. I'd like to get the meeting started. It is 7:03. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Mr. Bradley Share,
Here.
Mr. James Restivo,
Here.
Miss Carol Better,
Here.
Miss Melissa Boyd,
Here.
Miss Kate Mastanesi,
Here.
Miss Michelle Busso, and myself, Paula Whitford, here. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance to the flag. We don't have anybody in the room for community comments, so we will skip over that at this time. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes. Next item on the agenda is our new superintendent's report, and that is with Mr. Padiza.
Good evening. So on the agenda, we first have the ending of the past school year 23-24 report. My thanks go out once again to Superintendent Littlefield, Assistant Superintendent Meyer, and their team for their leadership and their hard work that made all of the following bullets and the closing components of the last school year possible. All federal grants, Title I, II, III, IV, and IDEA were able to be submitted without any error messages, and that has been successful. All contractual end of the year job actions for all bargaining units have successfully been completed, and all end of the year data and reports were convened and gathered together so that they could be submitted. While those are definitely tasks that every school district must do, to have interims in that position, to have turnover, to just end any school year and be in a position where we are not asking for an extension, where we are in a position to have everything at the ready is rare. And so again, my thanks to their leadership and the work of their teams. I bring that up because the successful closing of 23-24 sets us up for a successful opening of the existing school year. Because of our on-time grant submissions, we are well positioned to receive and respond immediately to any RIDE feedback on those grants. In addition to Bob and Alexis's work, our thanks go out to Ryan Kilpatrick and Miss Julia Huxley for their additional work that normally wouldn't fall under their auspices, but their additional work contributed to that being done on time and being now submitted. Because of the job placement actions, we are able to post and begin the interview process for all open positions, including administration. Our thanks go out to Ms. Charlene Briggs, HR coordinator, union leadership, and all building administrators. An update for 24-25 regarding the open positions in administration. The Director of Pupil Personnel Services have been posted, and I'm pleased to let you know that applications came in immediately and are still coming in. We received another 2 today. Our intent is to have the first round of interviews late next week.
Michael, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Certainly.
I don't think the fan is doing us that much good, and I'm really having trouble hearing over it. I'm just wondering, can we turn it off? At least try that, because I really can't hear.
When they don't know to turn down, to turn down the fan because they can't hear you over the fan means that we need to turn off the fan. Um, No, thank you so much. So, because of the job placement actions that were taken to end the school year, again, we're able to post and begin interview processes for certified and administrative positions. I wanted to give an update on the Director of Pupil Personnel Services, which has been posted, and we received applications immediately, and we continue to receive applications with just another 2 coming in today. Our intent is to have first round interviews late next week. And I would invite school committee members, if you're interested in serving on that first round of interviews representing the community, please reach out and we will, as we would like as many members of the public and the CLAC as well, included in that first round. On a related note, I am pleased to announce that we have secured the services of Mr. Julian McDonnell as interim director. Where he goes by Bud, so Bud McDonnell, recently retired as the Director of Student Services at East Providence Public Schools, and he was recommended by District Council. We have secured his services for 3 days a week, in which he will take on all student services activities with the exception of ESY activities. And that is because I'm pleased to report that Dr. Ryan Borden, principal of West Kingston Elementary, has agreed to serve as our ESY coordinator for the duration. So again, having a nice, strong administrative team where we can focus just on the needs of our students in summer learning, as well as convene committees outside of that, is essential in making sure that we have both experience in the classroom and in the buildings, as well as in central office. The assistant superintendent, the second round interviews were held yesterday. I'm hopeful and confident that we will have a name before you at the 29th meeting. Because of the data reports that have successfully been completed, we are able to get the access to the longitudinal data points that make up school and district improvement plans, as well as the RIDE accountability system that gets published in October and November. So I have to give thanks and shout out to Doug Snow and his entire team, including Ryan, Richard, Jill Musto, and Kim Thibodeau, for not only ensuring that this data being reported is able to be sent, vetted, but also for their work to get RIDE to add me to their systems in order to sign off on what can sometimes take a email, multiple emails, phone calls, people, how they got that done by day 2. It is commendable. So once again, at this time, it is my understanding and belief that we have submitted all required reporting to start that, to close that school year. And so my thanks to the tech team. Also going on at this time, we have summer learning. And as I alluded to, we have extended school year. We had the faculty and staff orientation was held on Monday. This was actually overseen by both Janet Sikowski and Michelle Young, which goes well above and beyond what their normal duties were. But because of their investment, because of their knowledge, because of their commitment, they took it upon themselves to make sure that that ran smoothly. And again, my thanks go out to them. The first day for students was today. So a shout out to Brian Mahoney and his team for making sure that the spaces in use at Broad Rock are not only air conditioning, well, we're all jealous, but they're also all accessible and usable for all students, which is turning a middle school into a pre-K friendly environment with all that comes with it is no easy task, especially in this heat, in the heat that we've had. So my thanks to him and his team. Secondary programming also began this week. So our thanks to Chip McGarr, Angelina Christina, Barbara Crudale, Matt Shields, Danielle DeSimone, Dana Lepley, for what has been reported to me as a smooth and successful start to summer learning, with even more people from other communities going, we're hearing about this, can we come in? Looking ahead in terms of future meetings regarding our summer learning activities, I do expect this to be on future school committee agenda items that I think is necessary, not only because do we want to talk about the outcomes and the sheer number of students that participating, but we have to begin this talk because of sustainability of these programs. As you know, Most of these, with the exception of ESY, which is locally funded, is being funded with expiring ESSER $3. So for all the great things and all the summer learning, when we want students to truly learn 365, we need to make sure that we have the resources in order to provide that and are reliant and are self-reliant, not federal grant reliant. And that will be something that we will, tackle immediately, and we will make the community aware of. In terms of other opening items, our next meeting, it's my intent to resume the reoccurring reports that the committee and the public are accustomed to, specifically the enrollment and personnel reports. We are also discussing the change of venue to Broad Rock. However, we didn't have a chance so that we can be in air conditioning. However, we don't know or didn't know in such quick time whether the technology needs could be afforded. And it was just too quick of a turnaround and risk that we didn't want to take today. Finally, I would be remiss if I did not give thanks to the people who got me up and running, jogging, walking in the district, both this week and last week. In addition to everybody that I've mentioned that has gone above and beyond and the things that I've mentioned, I need to give shout outs to Deborah Duda, Rachel Clench, Linda Norman, and Lynn Kinsen, for their diligent work to close FY24 and open FY25, as well as their patience with me as I routinely forgot the payroll paperwork they were requesting. So if I'm forgetting those things with the countless people across, how many people they need to do that, and they saw me every day. So my thanks to them for their work and their patience. To Kristen Gleason and Eric Lonergan for their insight they've provided to me into both the district and the community so far. To Terry, who even with COVID, when she should have been resting, was doing all that she could do to make sure that I and everyone in the district had what they needed in order to make both the closing of the old school year and the opening of the new school year possible. And lastly, I'd like to thank the committee members with whom who have been able to meet with so far over the past 2 weeks. Thank you for making the time to meet with me, and I look forward to meeting with everyone by the conclusion of this week. So thank you also for your leadership and making the time. So in terms of I believe day 6, we have had, in my opinion, thanks to the hard work of all of those people who have been here and have been here for a while, because of their diligent work and because of their ethics and their unwavering commitment, have brought us to a wonderful place to close out last school year and begin the next one on the right foot. And that concludes my report.
Mr. Pedraza, I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind. The Director of Pupil Personnel, you indicated that advertisement had gone out. Can you tell us when that closes?
I can check it on School Spring. We may have it open until filled because we did not know
Okay.
when or how many applicants we would get. I believe we are approaching double digits at this time.
Okay, so that's sufficient. Then I have a question about the summer learning, especially the summer learning geared to the high school.
Okay.
Now, I understand that we're funding that this year with ESSER funds.
That's great.
You said you've had inquiries about students from other districts. Are they bringing their ESSER funds to us with them?
No, they would not be. Those would be arrangements for out of districts. Generally, those are taken care of by the families themselves from outside of the district. We do not have an arrangement with another surrounding district to provide summer school or to open up our summer school for other districts to send their students here.
Okay.
But potentially an opportunity as we take a look in future years.
Just to piggyback for clarification, they've inquired
They've
and
inquired.
we've not been able to accept because we don't have that mechanism. Right?
So the people.
Something to look forward to,
Right,
maybe.
the people who have inquired currently from outside of the district, Unfortunately, our programming that would be offered was not applicable to their circumstances or aligned with their own home district policies. So without getting into too many specifics of the ones that have inquired, that tends to be the overarching reason of why currently and moving forward, we don't have any, or we've not been able to take anyone from outside of the district.
And you may not have wrestled this to the ground yet. And I know it has to come in through a budgetary situation. Ryan's hiding on me, but and he knows where to sit, so I can't see him. The trustees, going forward, what is your vision, your outlook for the credit recovery type summer school as far as finance goes, being part of our budget or charging families or?
So the current interpretation of Rhode Island general law is that districts are not allowed to charge their own students for summer school, or it aligns much with the field trip policy or ruling that came down. It's in alignment with that. Generally because, because of our requirements to give FAPE and have students that we cannot allow socioeconomic standing or the ability to pay to, or not to pay to get in the way or interfere with a diploma. So as such, our ability to charge, where back in the day, not that I would have ever needed to take a summer class in my during my tenure, but the days of charging families and taking is gone and needs to be like field trips. Cannot be done via donations, especially when you're talking about curriculum as well as the level of services that need to be provided by individuals. So the vision for us is to make sure that all of the things that I didn't talk about, such as the partnerships and the bids that you had accepted for after summer learning, to continue valuable experiences for students and families with the YMCA or to other community organizations, that those are opportunities that we're going to need to fund locally, barring any new, whether it be competitive or federal grant. So if we want to make sure that the things that we currently are not required to do, but that greatly benefit the district, such as credit recovery and making sure that our graduation rates stay where this community wants them to be, as well as where those students want them to be. That's something that we're going to need to potentially fund locally in FY25, barring any, again, outside intervention. The same, I would argue, is true for those enrichment activities that are being provided through, or that we could be offering. So in many cases, people think of summer school as opportunities for just that credit recovery, but it can also be used, if done properly. We can do that for advancement as well as interest for students, if done properly. And the community is given proper notice and also gets to visit those things, and it's, for lack of a better term, marketed properly. So those are opportunities both that based on the outcomes of students who need to attend our summer school offerings, whether it be because of their IEP status, or whether it be because we want them to graduate on time, or because we want to accelerate them or foster their intrinsic learning about one of the offerings. Those are things that, again, I believe if we want them and the community wants them and demands them, we're going to need to put those into FY25.
First of all, I just want to say welcome, Mr. Pedraza. We're very excited that you're here. And I think it's great that first, I can tell you've hit the you've hit the ground running. It sounds like a lot of work in less than what 10 days. So thank you. I think you're spot on how imperative it is right now to think about next year's budget. We always think, oh, we go into budget season next January. We'll think about it then. But we need to think about it now because we've been level funded. But we've been able to do it with closed building. We've had ESSER funds. But we don't have any more buildings to close and we don't have any more ESSER funds. So the reality is this next budget season is going to be tough. It's going to be, it's going to be a difficult budget. And so I really appreciate the fact that you're bringing that to us immediately right off the get-go and to put it on everybody's radar early. So I agree with you. It needs to be at the forefront. I don't want to lose programs. These summer programs are very important, but also other programs throughout the year are also extremely important. So I just want to say thank you for doing that and keeping those programs necessary and the needs of our district right in the forefront. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
I won't repeat what Carol just said, but so again, welcome. It was a pleasure meeting with you earlier today, getting to know you a little bit better and knowing and hearing firsthand how you have hit the ground running and what an awesome team we have that you were able to step into, and they embraced you immediately and made sure you were successful in these first couple of weeks. So it's really awesome to hear about the summer learning. So what I think might be helpful, and I believe it's already on the radar, but I would love to have it said out loud in more specifics, as I think it would be great for the community to understand exactly what summer learning is, because it isn't just summer school.
Correct.
It isn't just credit recovery. There is extended school year for students, no matter what, all the time, because of if they don't go to school between June and September, there would be drastic learning loss. Plus, we have learning loss from the past few years that still needs to be caught up on. So I'd love to see in the future, no urgency, but as we're talking about, especially tying dollars to all the programs, to have some sort of presentation and or maybe even a dedicated meeting or workshop explaining what exactly goes on in our buildings in the summer. There is a huge block of the community who thinks we literally on June 21st lock the door and don't open it back up until August 30th. But that is certainly not the case, and not just from a learning perspective, but from a maintenance and custodial perspective as well. So I'd love to have some sort of session explaining, this is exactly what happens between June 21st and August 30th going forward. It'd be great.
Absolutely. In terms of future agenda items, once we've got it up and running and we can have definitive numbers and metrics and dollar amounts that we can report on out, we will be doing so.
Believe me, I am a parent that is dropping off a kid here for credit recovery, and there is a lot of students. So there is a lot of need for the continuance of ESY programs. And I'm only speaking to the high school. So I only can imagine, the need to elementary schools. So it is a great need, and I agree with Carol, about the budget. We should be talking it now, right into the next year. The guys has already mentioned that. Also, yeah. So I will move us on to the next item on the agenda.
Make a motion to accept the superintendent's report.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. So, hey.
Madam Chair, can I make a suggestion? We return to community comment briefly since we've had an arrival. Do we need a motion for that, or can we? No. But we skipped it because there was no one here to comment. Yeah, so could we?
Table.
Oh, well, I'll move to return to community comment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. Come on up, Mr. Beasley.
So I'm looking out into the audience. And I'm representing the community tonight, Mr. Pedraza, and welcoming you to South Kingstown, South Kingstown School District. Um, we're, we're, we're expecting great things from this district with your leadership, and I'm looking forward to watching the growth.
With that, I will close community comments and move on to school committee business. Okay, first item on that agenda for school committee business is a discussion and action for the fiscal year 24-25 proposed budget. There's a revision number 4 and a presentation with Mr. Kilpatrick.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening.
Members of the committee. Tonight you have the fourth and final budget revision. I learned my lesson. You'll only get one of these next year. Wait till the end of the fiscal year. So I apologize and I appreciate your patience as we went through this process, but relatively short presentation for you here. We'll move quickly through this. You can see the changes. Then we'll have our final bottom line budget. Going forward from here, you'll only be seeing budget amendments from me. I'll be asking you to review those and approve those. So we will move to our agenda. Just going to give you the bottom line right up front, tell you exactly what changed, and then I'll give you the specifics by fund. I do have one slide on fund balance, and then we'll look at the summary to wrap everything up. So looking at slide 3, the bottom line. So essentially we have 2 primary changes. First and foremost, the final employee retirement system of Rhode Island, that's ERSRI, and the municipal employee retirement system rates in the state budget, fiscal 25, were higher than what we had budgeted for. That actually came out on the June 17th budget. I missed it. Thankfully got an email from Riasbo letting us know that these rates were higher. So I would have made it into revision 3, but it didn't. So I'm doing it for you tonight. So essentially, I'm going to recommend a fund balance appropriation to absorb that increase in the general fund. And then secondly, decrease the consolidated resource planning. That's our federal grants money, the carry forward amounts, and we got our final allocations from RIDE, essentially. Looking at that bottom table there, this is just a summary of the impact of those retirement rate changes. So you have the different categories of rates, the local rate, the federal rate, which is the rate that we have to contribute to ERSRI for our federal grants, and then the MERS rate. So you can see that that leftmost column is what I had budgeted for versus the state budget. The difference, column B there is the salaries. That was our voted and approved adopted salaries across those categories. So just the impact of those rate increases on the salaries, about $342,000.
So I just want to clarify. So if I see a state budget percentage higher than our SK budget, that's an expense. So it's a higher expense.
Correct.
So it, even though it says budget, it's not a revenue, it's an expense. So that when we see the impact, that's a negative impact, and it's that
Correct.
much more of a cost.
Correct.
I just,
Yep.
there's no negatives or positives here. I just want to make sure that
Sure.
everybody understands
Yep.
that even when it says it's a state budget, oh, the budget's higher. No, that's an expense budget. So the
Sure.
expense is higher.
Correct. You're
thank
right.
you.
We did not receive the revenue to offset this increased expense. It increased the bottom line. So thank you for the clarification.
So again, I'm trying to make sure I'm reading this correctly. We budgeted for 14.44%, and the state came in and said, no, honey, you got to budget 15.54%.
Correct.
That's where the 1.1%
Correct.
increase came from. And that is money that we pay out of the district's fund
Correct.
to the state for the teachers' retirement. fund.
Correct.
Thank you.
You got it. You nailed it. You nailed it. Exactly. So essentially we had to absorb that $342,000. So you won't see that exact amount as I go through this presentation because there's some puts and takes across the different funds. In addition to that as well, but essentially that's what we had to account for in this revision. So moving to the next slide now, slide 4. Just going to show you here in table form the comparison between what you adopted on June 26th and the revision, the gray column there is the bottom line across all funding types. So essentially, this represents an increase of $371,878 over the last adopted budget of June 26th. And I'll go through all the specifics as we progress here. I just wanted you to see everything highlighted in yellow is essentially where the changes were. So now we'll dive into the specifics. We'll go to slide 5 and we'll look first at the general fund on the revenue side. So the only change here, you'll notice I added a fund balance appropriation of $427,714. Again, that's not the 342 number, and I'll explain all those details, but essentially the only way we can absorb this increase now is to apply some fund balance. But there is some potentially very good news to help us offset that. So I'll just move right now to slide 6, the expenditure side, so we can go through some of the details here. So 2 primary changes in the 51,000 and 52,000 series. Those are the salaries and benefits series. So essentially because of these increased rates and some other changes to our allocations on the federal grant side, we had to absorb another FTE from IDEA into the general fund. That's a special education teacher at the high school. And with that, their benefits came along as well. And then looking at that 52,000 series, that is primarily tied to the increased rates in ERSRI and MERS. So it's a combination of moving the FTE with their salary and benefits and the increased rate. So that's the total increase there of $427,714, which I'm proposing we use fund balance to cover that cost. Questions here? Very good. All right, we'll move to slide 7 now. I have just a quick scenario I'd like to run through here for you about our fund balance. So this is just a projection of fiscal 25 year end based on our proposed uses of fund balance and the fiscal 24 year end results. So essentially just starting at the top and moving down, the fund balance as of the beginning of fiscal year 2024, that was a $2.9 million net of the encumbrances that we had to liquidate this year. And the proposed surplus, that number is much higher than what I've been reporting at the budget subcommittee meetings. And the primary answer for that is payroll encumbrances. So essentially, we had say 9 or 10 FTEs vacant throughout the year. Essentially, that's where that big surplus comes from. So we had 5 unpaid leaves of absence. So we didn't have to pay for those 5 employees for an extended period of time. We had 3 resignations. Those were extended vacancies. And then we had 5 additional vacancies that we never filled. So essentially, that's why that number has ballooned so significantly. And again, that is subject to audit. So that may go up or down, give or take, not substantially though. So then moving to our projected fund balance as of the end of fiscal year 2024, that's as of June 30 of this year, about $3.8 million. I have an estimated amount there for fiscal 24 encumbrances that I'll have to pay off in fiscal 25. So that's committed funds. So that comes off the top. And then I have 2 proposed uses for fiscal year 2025. First, now I've added in the general fund use of $427,714. And then again, the capital fund use of $1,163,000. So all of that nets to a fund balance proposed at the end of fiscal 25 of $1,639,623. Comparing that to our proposed operating budget for fiscal 25, that puts us at 2.6% of our operating budget. Our policy is between 1% and 2%, so we'd be just over that threshold, which is a good problem to have in one sense. So just kind of running through the scenario so you can see, okay, if we're going to use this additional $400,000 in fund balance, that's where this would put us, all other things being equal. That's a relatively safe scenario, we'll say, essentially.
I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but you sent us reports run as of 7/3/2024 showing the available balance. And to me, that was just, and I forget, was it 400,000?
Let me pull it up for you.
Oh, Melissa has it, good for her. So. Okay, well, now I'm available budget.
789,602. Does that sound right? the grand total on the last page, page 5. Is that what you're saying?
So I'm just wondering, what was the available budget on, I guess, yeah, that was my question on these reports. What was the available budget that? Not-
Sure. So it's the 789,602 takes into account all the encumbrances. So I added in those payroll encumbrances. So if you look at all of the 51 and 52 objects and you add up all those encumbrances, we won't be paying those encumbrances. We've incurred all of our payroll costs essentially for the year. So those encumbrances have to go to 0. So I
Okay.
added that amount into the available budget amount to get the 1.4 essentially.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, so it's two numbers. That's why I'm
Correct.
not
Yep, sorry.
seeing
I'm
it.
sorry, I
Okay,
should-
I'm
yeah,
just trying to
I should have
dream
had
in
a
my
note.
head.
Yeah, I
I'm
apologize.
not being able to do it. Okay.
Yep.
Great. But that's good. That's where that number comes from. It's just what I was asking. So, but again, you've got in 2023 encumbrances that affect that. So it's not really 1.4. It's like less the 580. So, but again, I just want to caution that these are not audited numbers. That we shouldn't be putting out there that we have a, 800,000, 900,000 surplus because we really don't know.
Sure.
I mean, we kind of did that last year. And then after the audited numbers, I think it was 680 at this time last year. And then the audited numbers came out and was 250.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
I mean, just because we're seeing a fund balance go from 2.9 to 3.8. So it looks like you have 900,000.
Sure.
Probably not. It could be still cut by several hundred thousand.
Sure. Yeah, it's a fair point.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions on this slide? Very good.
Yeah, just
Oh,
just
sure. Go ahead,
quickly,
sorry.
as Ms. Vetter pointed out, I'm wondering what your certainty is, or feeling of certainty about the current year surplus, because potentially it makes a big difference in terms of what that fund balance is at the end
Sure.
of the year, which could make a big difference in terms of what decision we want to make. If we're going to fall potentially below, if it were, right, because it
Sure.
was a swing of percentage wise,
Yep.
if the same percentage wise swing happened here, you're talking about almost $1 million
Sure.
less.
Yeah,
So then we're talking about a fund balance that is 640,000 instead of 1,640,000. So
sure.
I think that how certain we are about that number makes a big difference in terms of what we can and can't spend.
Yeah, I'm relatively confident that it won't change the same percentage in the other direction again. It's primarily tied to those payroll encumbrances. So we have those other encumbrances for purchase services and things of that nature, which we have contracts, we have orders, supplies, things of that nature. All those things will be coming and we will be obligated to pay those. We're not obligated to pay these additional payroll encumbrances because we've incurred all the costs. Everyone's been paid. That's been essentially liquidated. So a slight revision downward, sure, or upward, whatever the margin of error is, I'll go with that. So I'm relatively confident that, I don't want to put the exact number. I mean, I said at the town council meeting months ago, $1 million. I'm fairly confident it will be $1 million or exceed $1 million at this point, but I hesitate to say that. But I think we'll be in a very healthy spot at the end of fiscal 25, essentially.
As a result of the conversation that we had at our last budget subcommittee meeting, we talked about best accounting practices, and I know there's some acronym for it. I don't know what it is. For the fund balance, that perhaps it should be the goal of our fund balance should be a little higher than what we currently have in policy. So, perhaps that could be something that could come to the budget subcommittee for discussion. Whenever you think that that's appropriate.
Sure, absolutely. It could add to the-
And what other districts do and I know in some cases, you're comparing apples to oranges because not all districts keep track of expenditures and revenues in exactly the same way, but we are over our goal of a fund balance, which I'm not complaining about at all. So I just wonder if we should look at that policy maybe in the fall.
That's a great idea. Totally agree.
Make no.
Assuming I get reelected.
You have my vote, Michelle.
Okay.
I'm actually quite pleased with this number. I'd rather have us a smidge over. I believe this actually is pretty close to best practice, if I'm not mistaken. Our policy is pretty close, but like you said, we should look at it and make sure.
Little bit.
Yep, but I think this is a good, like you said, it's a good problem to have because we have some unknowns that we're faced with, especially around enrollment numbers, state funding. We've been held harmless with our enrollment numbers as far as certain expenses and state aid that we keep hearing this. This is a year 4, I think, of we're gonna fall off the cliff, and eventually we will. We just haven't yet, thankfully, but they've started to move us in that direction. So I would rather have a little extra room to play with. It would be irresponsible otherwise. So I feel like the past couple of years, we've done a really good job at running a tight ship while at the same time preparing for problems that we have obviously faced. Especially with the ESSER funds going away and some unknowns often that come out of the governor's office, especially as we're finalizing our numbers and they're still projecting out. So I appreciate this and I thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. All right, very good. We will move now to slide 8, looking at our federal grants on the revenue side. So this represents a net decrease of $55,837 from the previous adopted budget on June 26th. That's at the bottom line. So 2 primary changes here. We have a net decrease in our consolidated resource planning grants based on our final allocations from RIDE, and again, our reduced carry forward amounts. And then we have decreased ESSER 3 carry forward of about $14,028. That's tied to these TI 84 calculators that we purchased for the high school students that I thought I would have to expense in 25 that I'm going to be able to expense in 24. So that's good. So essentially just moved it back to 24 from 25. And then in Title I, we decreased our carry forward. Again, same type of problem. We were able to expense some capital furniture in fiscal 24, vice 25. So that's good. That moved it back. And in Title II, that slight change there is just due to our final allocation amount that we received from RIDE. And then in Title IV, you'll see that increase of 30,000. We transferred 30,000 from Title II to Title IV.
So Ryan, most of this is timing differences. We're not putting it in next year's budget
Correct.
because we spent it in this. So
Correct. Yeah.
we had it in 2024. We thought we
Yes.
were carrying it forward. We're not.
Correct.
It's just timing.
Exactly.
Great.
Exactly right. Yep. Great point. Any other questions on our revenue side, federal grants? Very good. We'll move to slide 9. Look at the expenditure side. So starting at the top there, again, we moved 1 FTE from IDEA to the general fund. That's the high school special education teacher. But we retained a 0.5 FTE. That's the MTSS. So now we have MTSS at a 0.5 in IDEA and 0.5 in Title IV. And in the 52,000 series, again, that's just net of the benefits movements for the special education teacher and the MTSS coordinator. 53,000 there, that's just based on our final IDEA budget. We had to increase some nursing services, professional development, and some therapists. Looking at the 56,000 series, that's based on the final Perkins budget, and Perkins is just our federal CTE dollars. Just some additional supplies that we wanted to add in there. And then lastly, the 57,000 series, again, that's just the movement of the capital furniture from Title I fiscal 25 back into 24. That's all that is. Questions or concerns? Excellent. Okay, we will wrap it up here. Slide 10, here's our summary. This is a comparison of fiscal 2024, the adopted budget to this new revised fiscal 25 budget. And it represents an increase at the bottom line of $244,232. And again, from this point forward, here's our bottom line. I'll simply be submitting budget amendments within that bottom line for your approval. So
Ryan, I just want to thank you for the final budget revision. I know it's hard to do a fourth revision, but it's great. And I really appreciate all your work. And I want to say that so you don't go home depressed.
no, not depressed. I appreciate that. Thank you, Carol.
But it is, it's a lot of good work and thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That concludes my report.
I would also like to, I have a comment and a question. My comment is, I'm grateful for the way that you present these budgets, because not being an accountant, it's way easier for me to understand like where money is going, even though I still don't like the parentheses, but that's never gonna go away.
You'll come to love it.
But I do appreciate, you know, the way they're presented. It's clear, it's easy to understand and so forth, and I'm grateful for that. My question is, and you don't have to name names, but you know, there were stories going around the state a few years back about some districts, you know exactly what I'm gonna say. Some districts not sending that percent of money to the state employee, to the, you know, ESRI, whatever those letters are, not sending their fair share of money to the retirement system. I know we, of course, have never been in that predicament, but is that still going on elsewhere? You can't, don't say any names, because,
Thankfully, I don't know.
oh, you don't know?
I don't know. Yeah. So
For South Kingstown,
Yeah,
so
right.
that's what
I
he
know,
knows.
but dealing.
happy to report. I'm not aware of
Okay,
taking
all
place. Like you said, it's not happening here. So
it's not happening here is a good thing, so I am aware. Just
you.
wondered how widely spread it was. Thank you, Ryan.
thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you all. Appreciate
Do
it.
you need a motion for us to?
Yes,
pass this
please.
down?
Yes.
I'd like to pass the budget revision 4 as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. Okay. Next item on the agenda is a discussion and action on a request to dispose of the maintenance vehicles. We have that memo in front of us with the request to dispose of these 2 vehicles that are not able to be inspected due to medical and safety related issues.
I'd like to make a motion to dispose of the maintenance vehicles as listed in the memo, transportation vehicle decommissioning.
Second.
Ms. Boyd?
Just for a point of discussion, in case the community wants to know, policy 3305 refers to this. And the only other thing I would be curious if Mr. Mahoney was here is if there is a documented list of the value, because if it's over $1,000, that's when it comes to us. So I'm assuming that is, but in case the community is curious, that is a relatively new policy piece. And I think that's to be as transparent and accurate as possible.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes.
Three 3305 is the obsolete policy, obsolete equipment policy.
So next item on the agenda is our Title IX policy. It's a first read. I will turn it over to Ms. Boyd to try and summarize where we're at with this policy as of today and where we need to go by the next meeting.
A little bit of back information and then ask Superintendent Pedraza if he would like to add anything. My colleagues who are part of the subcommittee on policy, Mr. Restivo and Chair Whitford, are aware that our legal team had let us know that there were changes regarding Title IX coming. We had our last budget meeting, our last policy meeting on the 17th of June. So our subcommittee was aware that this information was pending and we received a draft of this information on July 2nd. Typically, policies don't come to the full committee for a first read without having gone through our policy subcommittee, but that is in our purview to do, and they are aware of this sort of unique circumstance. And so our legal team provided to our superintendent and to our policy information a draft of the new content. What I have and will provide to you all prior to the second read is a comparison document. It is lengthy, not in that there are significant revisions, but the new content provided for you tonight provides much more explanation and I think is clearer, perhaps in some definitions than what existed before. And so you will see changes coming next time, but I wanted to allow, and I hope our superintendent as well, if there's comments, to ensure that you all have time to look at this, our community as well, and I will share it with our policy subcommittee to get their feedback. My brief review today indicated that simply put, we need to make some changes on this document to appropriately name South Kingstown School Department in many, many places. We need to ensure that we have an appropriate reporting process and our Title IX coordinator named appropriately. And we need to ensure that any due process for appeals are appropriately noted through our superintendent and or the Title IX coordinator. And forgive me as I look at my phone, I just wanted to see if there was any other pieces. I had sent an email regarding this and to ensure that we are setting specific reporting procedures for SK, that we have the opportunity to do that in this policy or make a revision. And I had asked our legal team to see if there are any examples of other districts and how they're responding to this new information that we could have in front of us prior to our second read. So those were my initial thoughts on this, and we'll make sure that you have that in writing in the near future once our legal team gets to look at my first round draft. But I will pause and ask Mr. Pedraza if he has any additional input in how he'd like us to approach this tonight, because we do have an August 1 deadline before us.
Thank you. So it is before you because of legal counsel Andrew Henius bringing this to our attention, that the requirement to have it change. And I believe that in most cases, or the primary driver, in addition to the revised regulations and guidance for Title IX, is also because come August 1, any incidents occurring August 1 moving forward would need to be governed and investigated under this revised policy, whereas any event happening prior to August 1 still remains with the prior policy. And so that's really one of the deadline pieces here that makes it so important, is that we need to make sure that by August 1, that any occurrence gets investigated according to the updated rules. We still can rely on our past policy for anything that is ongoing or may come to our attention that occurs. So in order to make sure, so the district is currently protected under its existing policy, under the existing previous rulings and policies that have been passed, in order to make sure that we protect the district, its students and taxpayers. We want to make sure that by August 1st, we are operating according to policies under the new guidelines.
So just a couple questions. So is this a federal requirement to update this policy?
I can't definitively say, but because it's Title IX
Yeah.
and it's coming from Andrew saying, you need to do this by August 1st, that would be, while I don't have it in front of me, that is my best guess.
That's my assumption too, because it's
Absolutely.
Title IX. I just wanted clarification.
Yes, this
And-
is not being, this isn't a ride. This isn't hey, after review of your existing policies, we see a glaring omission. This is not a, oh, let's make sure you're covered because previously you're not. No. Everything that is currently in place is appropriate, protects the district. It is just now under the new rules and for events happening after occurring on August 1 and or after need to be protected or investigated under the new guidance.
So have Andrew and his, or somebody at his firm gone over this to make sure it meets the requirements of
This is his exemplar policy, in which case that he's provided to us in the highlighted areas. Again, given that time was of the essence, we didn't have time to put in or didn't want to be presumptuous and put in South Kingstown or put in the elements that are there, but that's the intent.
And I do know that time is of the essence, so thank everybody for, recognizing this and working on it so diligently and quickly. I am a little concerned that we do have an anti-harassment, discrimination policy. I do have concerns that do they marry together? Are there things that are not consistent between the two? In the long term, I would like to flesh that out, not now, but it is a thought I had.
I can quickly respond, but will certainly ask for written verification from Andrew and team. I know we have been noted that our AAA policy was very well received and vetted in terms of its content. And again, I don't think we have to make significant changes based on this new content. My initial review indicates that those things align, and actually in what I've looked at for the draft of this policy, want to indicate both our connection to, and I will get the exact number for you, Carol, because I was looking at it earlier today. Give me 1 minute to look at this. Policy 1236, which is our non-discrimination, transgender and non-gender conforming policy, and 1261, anti-racism, anti-discrimination, and anti-harassment. I believe that language aligns, but I will ask for a professional opinion on that once we have a draft for second read to share with you all.
Thank you. You've thought my thoughts before I had them said, so thank you for being so well prepared. And I just want to say, Melissa is like a policy guru. I think she's done a magnificent job for us on policy. And I'm very sad that she's not running for reelection because she has big shoes to fill. So, but thank you, not only on this policy, but for all your work on all of these great policies that you've worked on over these years.
I just want to point out, there's also a policy 1262 Title IX. It says Title IX policy prohibiting harassment and discrimination and sexual abuse and misconduct. So we'll have to see how that plays into it as well. No, it says it's not title policy, it's Title IX policy prohibiting harassment and discrimination and sexual abuse and misconduct. I haven't read through the contents, but I just
That's our current Title IX policy.
right,
Yeah.
right. So right.
This, yeah.
This will replace that, but we're looking at how interplays with a couple other policies we already have on the books. Okay.
Has been our adventure in the world of policy, that when you start speaking of one, it certainly interweaves with others, and the committee has been very diligent on that. So I think for this piece, because it is several pages, it is not significantly different in the active policy 1262. Again, that is just my personal brief review. It is located in different places perhaps than our existing policy, and we will make sure that you get a vetted second read version with the strike throughs and our traditional yellow highlighting of what is changed. But if there are any things that you see, whether it's community members, policy subcommittee members, or members of this committee, or administration and educators that family members as well that need to comment, this is a great time to do that before it appears again on our next agenda.
Just one
Yeah.
other, just one other thing to consider as you're looking at these policies and how they fit together is we created a separate reporting form for the AAA policy. So when you think you're being harassed under that policy, you would fill out a form, and it seems like somewhere within that system of receiving the reports, somebody needs to say, well, this might be a Title IX complaint rather than a complaint which triggers a federal reporting requirement. And we don't want to avoid that requirement because somebody filled out the wrong form. So it just somewhere in that process, there needs to be someone's educated eye on those complaints to know, and I wouldn't know when we cross the line over into having to move into this process instead of our local policy process.
So I think it's super important that because we have these multiple policies, each one needs to stay in its own lane. We've done a very thorough job with, and even with our existing Title IX policy, there was a lot of thought and attention, and actually our students and one of our health and PE teachers were very active in helping us create our existing Title IX policy. And as long as each stay in their lane, and to your point, the coordinators for whoever the coordinator, we have a current coordinator for Title IX. And so they need to know this is Title IX, this is not Title IX, and they get trained on that. And there should be multiple coordinators throughout our district. It shouldn't just be one. And then also for our other policies, same thing. There should be a coordinator for each one, and they should be communicating with each other and be like, hey, what do you think? Oh, wait, no, that belongs over there. And everybody needs to stay in their own lane, for sure.
Any further discussion? Is there a motion on the table? Okay, all right,
At our next meeting for a second read. This
Yeah.
place.
okay. So, that concludes our meeting tonight. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 This meeting is adjourned at 8:06.